get the banging misses and videos. While I'm with my freak like we up in the freak shows. Hit you with the shit, make you feel it all in your toes. Hot shh, got all my people in red clothes. Telling my metaphors when I formulate my flows. If you don't know, you're messing with lyrical player pros like that. Wanna party with me?
Hey, what's up, everyone? What's happening, everyone? This is our, of course, Tuesday night edition of the Walking This Way Impact Wars podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Furman Jackson Jr., broadcast once again out of the DFW, Dallas Fort Worth, Texas metropolitan area. If everybody wants to know what that means, very honored, very excited, and it's truly a privilege and honor to have a very special guest on here with me out of my hometown. Currently, she lives in Baltimore, Maryland. Extraordinary journey. Went back. And the study your roots, ancestors, stuff like that. And out of that, it was showcased on the History Channel. Kudos to you and congratulations on that. But it's a journey that you've been on for quite some time. So I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience. I know you know stranger on here before, but I appreciate you taking time to your schedule to talk about this awesome experience, this awesome life-changing journey that you had experienced. And not only that, you're sharing it with everyone. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, hello everyone. So my name is Delisha Marshall. If you follow me on social media, especially Facebook, you can find me as Delisha Monique. So just here to talk about a little bit of my journey to learn more about my ancestry, some of the incredible things that I've found out along the way. I'm actually still processing all this information, but thank you, Furman, for allowing me to be on the show. So for people who don't know the background, I'm going to talk a little bit about Africa Town and the Clotilda. So I know that some of these might be a couple of buzzwords that you might have heard, especially over the past couple of years. So the Clotilda is the last slave ship that we know of to make its way from Africa to the United States. And two of my ancestors just happened to be on the ship. So they made their way from the Kingdom of Dahomey, which is now current day Benin in West Africa, landed in Alabama, Mobile, right outside of Mobile. So they were enslaved for about 5 years, and then once they were freed, the people who were still in the community, there were about 32 of them, banded together, and they founded this community called Africa Town, which is still in operation. Like, it's still there outside of Mobile, Alabama. So it was the first community of its kind to be founded by Africans, and they were their own autonomous community. And my great grandfather, his name was Goomba. He renamed himself Peter Lee, and he was the chief of the community. He married my great grandmother Josephine, and 6 generations later, here I am continuing to tell their story. So that's a little bit about the journey that I've been on.
Man, that's what's up, and that's awesome that you're doing this. And I say you did not just start it; you've been doing this quite some time now. Dating back probably like when I interacted with you, probably like a year or two, probably almost like 2 years.
Yeah. I think it's been definitely 2 years since the last documentary. So there was a documentary that I shot with the National Geographic called Clotilda, the Last Slave Ship, which gives like a very good background of the Clotilda of Africa Town, how it was founded, what happened. So the recent documentary that just came out last month was actually myself and Kudjo Lewis's descendants traveling back to Benin to reverse the journey, if you will, to learn a little bit more about what happened and what people on the continent think about us in the story. So that's essentially the synopsis of this last documentary that was recently released.
Man, and that's what's up, and that's important to know all this stuff, know our history, know our lineage, knowing quote unquote bloodline, and to really know where our ancestors came from, what they represent, the culture, and things of that nature. And that's something that we took lightly, but we have interviewed at yourself who take this very, very seriously to get an understanding, like going biblical for more, like quote the scripture, without like get a good understanding to, okay, this is who my people is, this is who my lineage is, my ancestors is. Now I get a better understanding of who I am. And how did this all come about for you just doing it to just really go back, trace back your family lineage?
Ooh, so that's a great question. So to be honest, what I'm doing is really building on the work that so many other people have really done for me. So I've had like a huge leg up in being able to continue this work. So basically how all of this came about for me, I would say it started around the time I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. I remember that there was a professor that came and spoke to my grandmother. So her name is Dr. Natalie Robertson. So at the time, she was working on her dissertation, and one of her professors, suggested to her that she travel down to Africatown to talk to some of the descendants to get a better understanding of what happened in the community. So that was kind of around the time that things really started clicking for me. Although I was still extremely young, it was just like, we had this chimney that was outside in the yard. So it's kind of odd to see, like, there's just this freestanding chimney in your grandparents' yard. So I would ask my grandmother about it, and the most she would give me was, oh, well, that's just a part of the house that I grew up in. So not really giving me too much details because it's a difficult story. So I can only imagine the emotions that brought up for her. So I'm still piecing a lot of this information together, but essentially what the ancestors, specifically the ones who were in Africatown, what they did was they would try and tell their stories to anyone who would listen in an effort to try and get back home. So essentially, that was what they wanted to do. They wanted to go back to Africa. And because they were only enslaved for 5 years, they were able to remember their traditional languages, their traditional religions, their original names. So they were able to carry that forward. So once they realized that they wouldn't be able to make it back to Africa, they decided, okay, we'll stay here in Alabama and we'll recreate Africa here in Alabama. And that's essentially what they did. So they built a church, which is now the Union Missionary Baptist Church, which still operates to this day in the community of Africatown. They founded their own school, which is also in operation. So that's the Mobile County Training School. So they did all of these things, and they were very intentional about passing the story down through the generations. So that's how I was able to learn as much as I know, because they kept the story going. So eventually that attracted the attention of all kinds of people, like Booker T. Washington came and helped to start Mobile County Training School. And then also Cudjo Lewis was at the time who we thought the last survivor of the Clotilda. That has since been debunked. The last survivor is Matilda McCreer, who was 2 years old when she was enslaved. So she outlived Cudjo, I believe, by 5 or 6 years. But so because they were so close to their original culture, they were able to pass it down through the generations, and that also attracted the attention of Zora Neale Hurston. So Zora Neale Hurston came down and she actually recorded Cudjo. She has like video, she has audio. So Cudjo was able to really tell the story, and now for anyone who really wants to hear it from a first person source is able to read that through her book Barracoon, which is Cudjo's story of how the whole thing happened.
That's awesome. And you know what? It just truly an honor and a privilege that they kept it going. Even though they
Mhm.
was in Alabama, they didn't give up. They didn't cave in to their way, their custom, Alabama wise, of course, but to
Right.
really keep the custom going. Okay, I know who I am, and they're not gonna take that from me. And that's truly a blessing that they kept that going on. And this is a year 2024, and it's
Right.
still going strong. And like I said, you've been fortunate to travel out the country, to go there, to experience how that was too, going out the country, just going there.
Man, so and it's like I really have to pinch myself because, like I said, I'm still processing a lot of this information. So although there were bits and pieces of things that were in my face the whole time, it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I really got a full understanding of what all of this meant. And like the history of just everyday people that people talk about Kudjo Lewis and they're like, oh my God, like he's such, and I'm like, no, people in my family will refer to him as like Uncle Kudjo. So if you talk to people in the community, it's just, yeah, people talk about them as if they're still here, which is great. But I have to pinch myself because it's really I asked myself, I'm like, did I manifest this? And the reason why I say that is because I remember being 14 years old and my grandmother passed in February of that year. And I had a high school project that I had to do on my family tree, and she would have been the person that I would have needed to talk to. And the project was due that April. So I missed it by like 2 months of not being able to get that firsthand information from her. So I was able to do the family tree based off of, we had our family history recorded, I believe, in 1988. That was one of the years that we had a family reunion. So shout out to my cousin Lucy for typing up that information. So I was able to take that and to build the family tree based on that information. And at the time, we thought our ancestors came from Ghana. So now we know it's modern day Benin. But after reading the books and looking at documentaries, and then, we could also talk about the Woman King, but because that also comes into play as well. But doing more research on everything and really putting things together, it's like I have a better understanding, sort of where people were coming from and what happened. But the whole journey has been nothing short of amazing. So being able to actually go back to Africa and talk to people that I'm distantly related to, like I actually got to talk to like my distant relatives, able to find them over there in Africa and have conversations with them about what happened. That's like a one in a trillion opportunity that most Africans in diaspora will never get the opportunity to do. So I'm very, very grateful to have had that opportunity.
And like I said, you do extraordinary things, of course, and you've been very consistent with it, passionate about it, and all of that. You're getting information out for those who wants to hear this great information. All of that is a documentary out of it,
Mhm.
and of course, you are a part of the documentary. Kudos to you on that. How was that experience just watching yourself on this documentary?
Ooh, so that was that was hard. So I'm eternally grateful to National Geographic for having that opportunity. So actually, I was able to watch it before it premiered to the wider audience. So was at home by myself, watched the link, and at the time it was like, okay, I tried to go in with an open mind because what you guys didn't see was we were in Benin for a whole week. So we shot like so much, and it was like, okay, well, are they going to put this in the documentary? Like what kind of angle are they going to come at it with? So that's why I was like, okay, that was what I wanted to see the most, because a week of shooting and the documentary is only 45 minutes. So obviously everything isn't going to fit in within that time frame, but I feel like they did a very good job of giving a very wide overview of the experience. So obviously they didn't get to everything, but I'm really, really pressing for them to have a part three, because if you watch the documentary, having conversations with the people that I'm distantly related to, the conversation got a bit heated. So yeah, that was the
Okay.
most interesting part. So it's like I want to continue to have that conversation because I think it's very relevant to Africans around the diaspora of, we're still trying to wrap our head around slavery. Like, people don't like to talk about it. It makes people uncomfortable, but it's like,
Right.
this is something that happened. And, here in America, because I can't speak for anybody else's experience, we're basically taught that, oh, a bunch of Europeans went over to Africa, they captured people, threw them in a boat, and they came to America or wherever else they were slaves. And then the Emancipation Proclamation came along, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and 100 years later, Martin Luther King had a speech, and now we're all one big happy family. And that's not exactly what happened. So even doing my research, that was the biggest shock of, oh, there were Africans that participated in the slave trade, because they don't necessarily teach you that part. But that's also where the woman king comes into play, because it's like, okay, now you get a better understanding of what was happening and why they were participating in the slave trade. So that is something that I feel like we need to have deeper conversations around, because we have a tendency to have misconceptions about Africans on the continent. Africans on the continent have a tendency to have misconceptions about us. And it's like, no, we need to sit down together and hash some of this out and dispel some of those myths. Uh-oh. Did I lose you? Uh-oh. Did we freeze, or did I freeze? Uh-oh. Can you hear me? I don't know if you guys can hear me. I think he froze. Okay. All right. So I guess for anybody watching, does anybody have any questions for me? I'm going to try to see if I could see what you guys are typing while we wait for Furman to get back. All right. So basically, let's see. All right. So I do have a couple of questions that people have sent me, so I guess we could answer some of those. So someone sent in, I'm interested in researching my family tree. How should I get started? So if you are interested in doing research on your family tree, my suggestion would be to start with the people that are closest to you and try to work your way back as far as you can. So that would be starting with your parents, starting with your aunts, your uncles, cousins, then going back to your grandparents, like just trying to go back as far as you can. So I would also say get on websites such as ancestry.com, doing DNA tests. That has also been very helpful with me on my journey. So shout out to AfricanAncestry.com, because they are Black owned. And they also do not sell your DNA. So I would start there. And then they also can trace your DNA back to a particular country and a particular ethnicity that you might be descended from. So I would start with those. Then also, if you do get on ancestry.com, or even if you don't, if you have family members who save like funeral programs have a wealth of information about who you are related to. They give you information about organizations that people might have been a part of, their occupations, things of that nature that websites like ancestry.com might not give you. So they give you details about the actual person. And then I would just work my way back from there. So, good question. Thank you for sending that. Then Furman and I talked about this, but someone also asked, how did you learn so much about your roots and your family history? So, as I mentioned, reading books, because my ancestors did come over on the last slave ship, so that's been fascinating. I want to say there are a good 5 or 6 books, probably more, that detail the history of the Clotilda and how it got started. So that has been very helpful to me on my journey. But then also, I have people in my family who actually do this. So I also have to give a shout out to my cousin Connie, because she is like just on a whole nother level when it comes to genealogy research. So she was able to get our family tree back to an ancestor in 1795 who actually came from France and moved to New York. So there's so many other branches on my family tree that I'm still learning so much about. I'm actually planning to travel to Charleston next month to do more research on that side of the family, and to go back, because if you aren't aware, a large portion of enslaved people came into the United States through South Carolina, the Carolinas in particular. So I want to say maybe 30, maybe even 40% of enslaved people came to America through Charleston specifically. So if you don't have anywhere else to start, I would start there. They just recently opened a museum, so it's just a wealth of information and people who would be willing to help you deal with that. So I would say start there. Start with the people that you can actually talk to, and try and get as much information as you can in regards to that. Um, then I also got a question about how did you get involved with the National Geographic? So with that, I would have to say really it was God and just happening to be in the right place at the right time. So what happened with that was I saw something pop up on my Facebook feed of all places about a documentary that they shot for the Clotilda. And I just happened to see it. So the National Geographic Museum is actually located in Washington, D.C. And as you heard, I live in Baltimore, Maryland. So essentially it's down the street. So I mentioned to my cousins who live in the DMV of, hey, they shot this documentary. They're showing it. It's free. Do you guys want to go? So I ended up being the only one that went. And after the program was over, had the opportunity to talk to Miss Joycelyn Davis, who is also a Clotilda descendant. She still lives in the Africatown area. So if you get the opportunity to watch Descendant on Netflix, she is featured in that documentary. So she was able to link me with the Clotilda Descendants Association, which I had no idea existed. But that was a way for me to join in with the descendant community and learn more about other descendants who share the same history. So again, was at this documentary screening, having conversations with her, and one of the National Geographic producers happened to overhear our conversation. So she was like, excuse me, did I hear correctly that you are also a descendant? And I'm like, yes, I'm related to Peter and Josephine Lee. So she was like, "Oh my God, we've been looking for someone in your family." So I'm kind of like, "What are you talking about?" So exchanged information with her. Once she realized I was in Baltimore, she was like, "Well, would you be willing to come back and have conversations with us? We're working on another documentary. We would like for you to be a part of it." And that was how I got the opportunity to participate in the documentary called Closer Than the Last Slave Ship. So if you're looking for that, I think that one might be on Hulu as well. I'm not entirely sure. But if not, I know it is on YouTube. So you are able to view that documentary in its entirety for free on YouTube, which also gives history and background of the founding of Africatown and the Clotilda. So then another question that I got was, what was it like filming the documentary? um, so that it's kind of hard to describe. Like, we ran through all of the emotions that you could think of. So whether that is fear, because I definitely had like reservations of going over there and having conversations with folks, because if you read about the Fawn people, or some people call them the Homians, but their ethnic name is Fawn. So reading about them and watching the Women King and learning more about the Agoje, which we could talk about as well. So they are a very fierce set of people, meaning that they were constantly at war. They were constantly conquering other communities, other people who were in the area, all in an effort to try and expand the Dahomey Kingdom. So people who have watched the Women King know the story of what was happening, and they had to pay tribute to the Oyo Empire. And the Oyo Empire is located in what is now modern day Nigeria. So they had to pay tribute, whether that was giving them gold, giving them like trinkets or whatever, to basically just, we'll leave you alone if you pay us off. So essentially, that's what the Kingdom of the Home is doing. Hey, Furman, welcome back.
Hey,
I'm just answering questions that people
hey, that's
sent.
good. Hey, that's good. Cause what happened on my end, my technical difficulties on my end, but I appreciate you being a pro
Yeah,
and
yeah.
keeping it going. Yeah, that's what happened. It's
Yeah.
that what happened. But no, what I thank you for just keeping it going. But I
No,
thank everybody for tuning in and being patient. Like I said, you're doing great work, Delisha, of course, what you're doing. Like I said, I know you've been doing this for quite a time.
mhm.
Being consistent with it, just taking this thing to where it needed to the forefront. And personal wise, how have your life truly changed from this transition of your life?
Ooh, so it has been, and it still is very much a journey. So anyone who has known me for a number of years, there's like a real transformation that is taking place, whether that is, as you can see, my locks. So I started my locks, when COVID first hit. So it's been 4 years, and as you can see, they are just flourishing. So even before that, even making the decision to rock my natural hair, and then growing up and being from the deep south, there's a certain way that we present ourselves, whether that's straightening your hair through hot combs or perms. So it was like, get away from that. So all of these things that were, I think I got my first perm when, again, around 7 or 8. So that was around the time that I'm kind of figuring out things with my ancestors of, oh, I want to straighten my hair. I want, my hair to be straight. I don't want to have to sit and, have my mom press my hair every Saturday, and I can't go outside and play because then I'll sweat my hair out. Like all of these things that we used to do when we were younger, that I'm happy, the generations coming behind us don't have to subject themselves to, we no longer do. So making the decision to wear my natural hair, that's been a thing. So even the way that I dress now, like I dress very, if you look at me, with all of the long dresses, like even the picture that you have in the background with, the robe and the cowrie shells, like I'm always wearing cowrie shells. Even learning more about Ifa and traditional African spirituality and practices and all of these things, and basically just getting back to what our ancestors used to do, the way that they used to live their lives before they were forced to give all of these things up. So it's like, getting back to that, learning more about what it means to be an African woman and learning about traditional African ways. And I would have to say, being here in Baltimore, it just really sped up that process because there is a community here of like-minded people. Like
Okay.
we love Black people. We're all about Black empowerment, Black community, Black family. Black economics, Black businesses, like everything Black. And then also in particular, I have to give a huge shout out to Egbe Oya Obenreen, Rites of Passage. So that is a group, like, and we'll talk about this because I just got finished doing something with them today of learning what it means to be an African woman and really challenging the way that we've grown up here in America, because it does feel very unnatural being Black in America. And if you
Mm-hmm.
ever get the opportunity to go to Africa, you'll completely understand what I mean. Like, there's a way that you have to conduct yourself here in America, whereas, if everybody looks like you're not questioning, like, did this person, like, what does this mean? Like, did they say that because I'm Black? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it like, you're constantly questioning these little microaggressions, and you don't have to worry about that over there because everybody looks like you. So that comes with another set of things, because then you have to worry about, like, class. You also have to worry about complexion. But I mean, these are some of the things that we deal with here, but on the
Right.
continent, it's in a different realm. But just basically being authentic and living my life the way that I would had we not been introduced to these European concepts of beauty and the way
Right.
we should act and things that people consider to be other, and we suppress that. And it's like, no, there's nothing wrong with practicing traditional spirituality or learning about Olodumare or the Orisha, or wearing your natural hair, or wearing colorful clothing. Because even I work in corporate America, so the way that I dress on the weekends might not necessarily be the way that I dress when I go into the office. So
Right.
not having to do that code switching, it gets exhausting. So trying to get away from that and just being authentically myself. And people ask questions, and I mean, like, rightfully so. So it's like, bring on all the questions. And the reason why I do things like this, and I thank you for giving me this platform, is so that maybe somebody else will have the courage to rock their natural hair or ask questions and be like, okay, well, what is Ifa? What is that? Like, what is Orisha? Like, how can I learn more? How can I learn more about my ancestors and things of that nature? So it's like, if I can do this, anybody can do this.
So in other words, just no, there's no excuses at all for you out there to learn it, grow from it,
Right.
evolve. And it's all about freedom. At the end of the day, it's all about being totally free, being yourself, being custom who you are, not allowing society to dictate how we're supposed to live,
Right.
how we're supposed to act, how we're supposed to talk. But you know what? But going back to that original landmark that was already set for the beginning of time,
Mm-hmm.
taking it, learning as you grow and apply it. And it's a beautiful thing. And just about the comments and people asking questions, that's a good thing too. Because it's all about being open minded. I heard it before I came on the show tonight. I heard that word, being open minded.
Right.
And it takes for us to be open minded to learn, to explore, because life is beautiful. And I
Mm-hmm.
know God created us, and I know He gave us so much. And I tell this on the show all the time. God did not create us to be a waste. He did not.
Right.
So it's all about knowing your value, knowing your worth, knowing who you are, knowing where you came from, knowing your identity. And once you know your identity, nothing, nothing will not hold you back. You know who you are. So what's next for you? I know you got the documentary under your belt.
Yeah.
Are you so what's next on the menu? What's next on the plate? What's next on the agenda?
Next. So I've been thinking about that. Like I said, I'm pressing National Geographic to do a part 3. I hope that they do. If they don't, then I'm willing to do a part 3, even if that means that I have to go off and do it myself. So maybe a possible documentary that I like produce and direct and edit and do all of the things. So obviously that's going to take money. So if anybody has any suggestions on grants or things of that nature, please send them my way. Looking for all of that. somebody even mentioned, oh, well, maybe you should write a book. So I'm like, okay, would love to write a book about my experiences. Somebody also mentioned writing a children's book, which I never thought about, but I was like, oh,
Okay.
that's easy. So maybe do a children's book. What I ultimately would love to do is to take other people back to have the kind of the same experience that I did. So it's like you might not be able to have conversations with distant relatives the way that I did, but you are able to take your ancestors back. So with the Dahomey Kingdom, they were responsible, I want to say, for maybe 20 to 30% of the people who ended up in the transatlantic slave trade. So chances are somebody in your family did come from that region.
Right.
So it's go back, like see it for yourself. So we were able to take I took soil back from Bumpa's house and left it in the palace as a way of, fulfilling his wish of, hey, he wanted to go home. He didn't get to go home in his lifetime, but I was able to
Mm.
take him back during mine. So was able to leave some of the soil from his house in the palace that he would have been hanging out in. So in a way, he did get the opportunity to go back home. Also, if you watch the documentary, there is a tree in one of the villages, which is called the Tree of Remembrance. So we were able to hold a visual for the ancestors that came over on the Clotilda. We were able to call their names, and things of that nature. So it's like if anybody wants to recreate that experience, but you go back, you call out your family name, and you're able to say, "Hey, we brought you guys back home." I would love to do that. So then also learning more about the Agoje. So I mentioned them earlier. So I took a trip last year. It was February of last year. Um, with the Queen Mother, Duarte de Sur. So she had, it was four of us that she took back to Benin in order to learn more about the Agoje and who they are and the role that they played in the Dahomey Kingdom, which again, if anybody watched The Woman King, you should be familiar with. These were the women warriors who were a part of the Dahomean army, and they
Hmm.
were infamous around the world of, people knew not to mess with them because it was unusual to have an all-female regime. But they were the ones who ultimately protected the king. So that was very unusual. So, and also mentioning what I was doing today, my Ia, shout out to my Ia, Mama Gina. So she is hosting a Agoje camp currently here in Baltimore for young ladies, I believe between the ages of 8 and 14.
Hmm.
So just out there learning about the Agoje, and really building up these young sisters, affirming them, letting them know that they're beautiful, they're loved, that they can handle anything that life throws at them, that they have a community of women who are here to support them, that we love them, and just trying to reintroduce them into what it means to be an African woman, especially being a Black girl growing up in the inner city. You might
Right.
not have people who are there for you. So just, hey, we're here for you guys. We understand what you're going through. We've gone through some of the same things that you've experiencing, and we're here to listen to you. We're here for you. So just really building up their self-esteem and making sure that the next generation understands who they are and where they come from, and that one day they are going to be leading these types of activities, and that they're very much needed in the community.
Hey, I agree 1,000% because we're in a jacked up world right
Yeah,
now.
especially
Um,
right now. Yeah,
yeah.
it's really interesting right now in particular. So even when you ask that question of what's next, it's like, yeah, what is next? Because if the political climate goes a certain way, some of the things that I'm talking about as far as writing books and doing documentaries, some of these stuff it will probably be banned just based off of the subject matter, which I think is crazy.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Everyone should be able to talk about where they come from and the things that they experience. But right now we're going through, I'll just straight up say it, a whitewashing of America. So it's like if you're
Right.
not Christian, heterosexual, if you don't fit into a certain type of box, they're really trying to erase you from history. So it's very scary times right now.
Yeah, that it is. It's so much that's going on right now. So much taking place. I see it all the time. I know you see it all the time,
Hmm.
and it's so much stuff taking place, especially when the generation were born. Okay, born in the '80s,
Hmm.
grew up in the '90s. Times where okay was fairly decent. Don't get me wrong, we had issues, but it wasn't like it is today. When you see it in your 40s, like wow, never
Yeah.
know. We see this type of stuff in the times we're in, especially when it comes to our younger people. You know, the mindset, social media. People want to blame everything else, but we had to go back to our communities because our communities right now is just up
They
and down.
need us. Yeah, exactly. They need us. So, I mean, it's just been very interesting to see just how much things have changed. Because I really
Yeah,
feel like, back when we were in school, Black History Month was a real thing. I remember
right.
like every day we were learning about a different person. And now it really just feels like, oh, it's Black History Month. Like we'll put up some decorations, like just to say that we check the box. But it's like, no, you really need to sit down, and I'm gonna put the onus on us. Don't ever send your kids to school thinking that they're going to get everything that they need. So no, they need to know who Malcolm X is, who Dr. Martin Luther King is, um, Marcus Garvey. Like you need to know who these people are, and the person who needs to teach them is us. We can't leave it up to anyone else
Mm-mm.
to teach our children because they're not. And as you can see right now, they're definitely trying to make it illegal to talk about these people, which is also a reason why I'm so passionate of having a third part of the documentary, because it's like if
Okay.
you talk about it here in America, because they don't want to ruffle feathers, and it makes a certain group of people feel uncomfortable to talk about slavery, and they don't necessarily want to talk about it on the continent because it makes them look bad. Then where does that leave everybody else? Of, hey, I know this is an uncomfortable conversation, but it's still a conversation that needs to be had. So that's part of the reason why I'm here. So if you learn more about Ifa and traditional African religions, we have this thing what we call destiny. So even if you've read The Purpose Driven Life, what is your purpose? Why are you here? Part of my purpose is to force the conversation. Like, let's have an
Yeah.
uncomfortable conversation. It's not always
Right.
going to be pretty. It's not always going to be nice. And, that's fine. That's okay. But we're going to have that conversation.
But you know what? That what growth taking. That's what the growth come in at.
Hmm.
Is having these conversations. Now I'm glad now that we are starting to address the elephants in the room. Now compared to when we was growing up, we were not talking about a lot of
Right.
things.
Right.
That's why when people got into these relationships and got into these marriages, just keep it a book here.
Yeah.
They is a thing called sleeping with the enemy.
Right.
You think you never really when you actually get into these relationships with these people, you didn't realize you signed up for all this stuff that they was dealing with, the trauma,
Right. Hmm.
uh, the upbringing. 'Cause
Right.
we never ask these questions. We know it's hey,
Exactly.
have you been assaulted before? I want to know have you been physically assaulted? Have you been sexually assaulted before? All these things play a role. Mental issues, mental health issues. Hey, have you take do you take medication? I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out there, but
No, I mean, but that's very true. Those are the questions that people don't have a tendency to ask, and it's like these are the questions. These are the things that you need to know. So when it comes to something as far as marriage, you have to take that very, very seriously, and
I
we have
agree.
to do a better job of you don't necessarily want to interview people because it's like, okay, over time, but it's still, you need to ask uncomfortable and those hard questions, because it's like, okay, just because everything looks good on the surface doesn't mean that it's all good. Like once you get into the marriage and a relationship, these things are going to come up whether you realize it or not. So it's better to just put it all out there, keep it 100, and be like, hey, this is who I am. You have the choice to deal with it or you don't, but at least that way you can't say that we never had the conversation, you didn't know this is what it is.
Yeah, this stuff makes sense. And like I said, that's why I'm glad we're addressing the elephant in the room now. As we have these conversations, let's put everything out on the table.
Mhm.
If it going towards that route, okay, we need to put everything out on the table. You got to talk about a lot when it comes to tradition, religion, politics,
Finance.
uh, finances,
Yeah.
because all this stuff plays a role. Okay, no, what is the plan? Why are we together? What's the plan here? What's the vision here? No,
Right.
it's more than saying I's married now. I don't want to be talking about this tonight, but it's more than saying I's married now. What is need to be a vision? I say this. Me personally, in order to be, I believe in successful relationships. I believe in successful marriages. I look at it from a business standpoint. I'm not. Love is cool. I like the love part. That's good. But it's also the business standpoint. It's like where we're going, what our philosophy is, especially when
Right.
it comes to building a legacy.
Right. And that's part, and basically that's a real big reason of why I do this. So, I'm not married, I don't have kids, but I do this in order to make sure that my goddaughter knows this information.
Right, most definitely, most
My
definitely.
younger cousins know this information. If I am fortunate enough to have children, they know this information. It's like they don't have to work as hard to figure out who they are, because it's like, if you really want to know, hey, this is where we come from. This is the language that we spoke before we were forced to learn English. These are our
Hmm.
traditions and our customs that we used to practice before we were cut off from this. So you now have the opportunity, and again, I'm not going to force this on anybody, but it's just, hey, if you are interested in learning about any of this information, the information is out there. You can come talk to me, you can read books, I can point you in the direction of other people who might be able to help you, but you can't say that you didn't know. Like,
Yeah, but
there was a time that we didn't know because we were forced not to know. But now you have an opportunity to reclaim that if you choose to.
that's it. That's what's up right there, and that's what it's all about. Is that facts? Love don't. You got that right. Love don't pay the bills. You got that right. You gotta have a plan. Hey, I agree with that 1,000%. I believe in that. What's the vision? You gotta have a vision. You gotta have a plan. So it's a business to me. I don't care
Yeah,
what nobody say. I say it's a business.
it absolutely is. But people have a tendency, and then I also feel like that goes back to this Eurocentric idea of it's supposed to be romantic and fluffy and loving all the time, and it's like, no, like, I'm divorced, so I know what the ugly side of that is, and that's why it's like, okay, now I know better. Of, you have to ask those hard questions. Like,
I've been down the road before.
if you are a spender and the person that you're with is a saver, it's like, okay, you have to find some type of middle ground of how are we going to navigate this. So then also I personally practice Ifa. So that's a traditional African spiritual practice. So
Okay.
some is Christian or they're Muslim. It's like, are you going to be okay with that? So I grew up in the Baptist church, so I still love Jesus. However, this
Right.
is what it is. This is what I'm on. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if this is going to make you uncomfortable, then don't even go down that route. Like,
Right.
you gonna have to deal with it. Either deal with it or don't. So and again, I like to shop. So if you save your coins, you're always like, no, like, no, I like to enjoy myself. I like going to concerts, I like to travel, I like doing things. So if you're more of a person that's just like, nah, I like to chill at the house and I don't necessarily want to do, I might not be for you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's okay. But that's why it's like, okay, we need to really get to a point of where we need to be open and honest about who we are. And that also goes back into learning about your
That's
family
it.
and researching. And I'm like, these are some of the things that could save your life. Of, hey, my family has a history of diabetes, my family has a history of heart disease, my family has a history of Alzheimer's. So it's like, if you know these things, that could better help you in the future to, oh, I probably shouldn't eat that. I'm going to have to work out a little bit harder because I know I have these things in my genetic background that could hinder me later in life.
So that's what I'm talking about. See, these kind of things you need to know, and these kind of things you need to apply to your life on a regular basis. Of course, learn these things. Like I said, when you go towards that road of marriage, yeah, it's something very serious. I've been down that road too, with divorce. I've been there before, been there, done that with a t-shirt. But that was back in 2017 when that happened, and it's
Yeah.
2024. But in the process of learning who you are, learning yourself, learn yourself, and
Mhm.
don't do things for other people. That's what's going on in this generation too, as well. They do stuff for other people,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
lose yourself in the process.
Right. And it everything starts with self. So if you know yourself and you're really in tune with who you are, then you can better sidestep some of those things that might hinder you on your path. So it's like, okay, I know this about myself. This isn't going to work. This person isn't for me. I'm not going to try and force this relationship. It it's just, you're not the person for me, and
Yeah,
that's okay. Every relationship doesn't have to end in marriage. You guys could be great friends. You might not ever talk again. You have to be okay with that.
yeah, that's it. You gotta be okay with that because I don't believe in arguing. I don't argue. I don't believe in it. It's not healthy and it's not normal. It's not. Bump that hell no. Somebody you sitting, you can't even come to your house. You sitting in the driveway for 5-10 minutes. You can't go in the house. You
Right.
the hell no. That's not living. I'm sorry.
Exactly. And then also too, that also goes back to our experience of being black in America. And I think about this all the time of, there was a time where we were torn apart from our families. So it's like, we got to
Yeah,
get back to that. We got to get back to black women being on the same page. We have a common goal. We're trying to raise these children to be better than what we are. We're trying to leave them with, a piece of property and more wealth than what we had. And
that's
hopefully
it.
the generations behind us will continue to build on that. So now it's just, like you said, with social media, and everything is very selfish. Everything is very me and what can I get out of the situation. And it's like, no, that's not African. It's about the community. Like, you got to make sure you're good, so then you can make sure we're good. It's
That's
me.
it.
Me.
That's how I look at it, Delisha. When I say this is what I say. It's supposed to be me and you. This is my philosophy. It's supposed to be me and you against the world, not
Right.
me, you, and the world. And what goes on,
Right.
everybody wants to include the world in their business.
Right.
Whatever we decide to do, that's our business. However you decide to raise the family, that's how our business. People want to include everybody in everything. No,
Right.
it's me and you against the world,
Yeah.
not me and you and the world.
You have to be very discerning of who you're talking to. So yeah, so there are going to be times of, you might need elders or a community, or you might have to go to therapy in order to work through some of those issues. But you have to be very careful about who you allow to know about what's going on inside of your
Oh yeah,
house.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely, most definitely. Be careful of that. Like I said, I heard Dr. Miles Monroe, the great Dr. Miles Monroe, said this at a men's conference. He said he was talking to the guys. Anyway, he asked the guy. He said, "You ask a woman to marry you, instead of her saying yes, she need to ask you what's the vision,
Mm, yeah.
because okay, you want me to marry you? What's the vision? Where we're going? Where we're heading?" Back then, fathers, if you did have your father around, the father used to ask the guy, what is the plan you have for my daughter? How are you gonna take care of my daughter? They weren't gonna let your daughter marry you if you didn't know where you was going.
Right.
And
Right.
we lost sight of that because we take on these bad relationships and it ends in chaos and turmoil because we never really sit down to educate ourselves. We did stuff out of our earrings, okay? I can say that.
Yeah, and I mean, but then also too, that also goes back to, again, that's why I'm like, it's very scary times in America
It
right
is.
now. It was also very intentional to split up the black family. So there
Oh
were
yeah.
certain things that were happening of, you know, sometimes daddy had to leave because it's like, well, we can't get these food stamps if there's a man in the house. So that
Mm.
forces that man to have to go his separate ways from the family. And it's like, yeah, or I can't get a job because I'm a black man. Don't nobody want to hire me because it is. And there are certain things that are put in place to ensure that we could only go so far. So that's why it's like, all of this fighting and back and forth that people do on social media, and like calling people out of their names and y'all sorry, and all of this derogatory talk of, it's very intentional to keep us separated. And it's like, no, we need to sit down and have real conversations of, how can I love you better? What do I need to do as a woman in order to make you feel heard? How can I support you? What do you need from me? Like, we need to have more of those types of conversations. We need to have healing conversations.
And yeah, that's what it's all about. Have these conversations and not look for somebody to be your mother. Some of these guys want the wives to be their mother. She's not supposed to be your
Right.
mother at all. Not that at all. But having these conversations where we can move forward. Stop bickering against each other. The independent thing, I hear people talking about, she's independent. She's just responsible. It's not wrong with the independent spirit. When I say independent means she's just a responsible an adult. She goes to
Right.
work. She pays
Take
her
care
bills. She have a roof over her head.
of
That
yourself.
means she's responsible. And some guys can you look at that and say, you know what? I know if God forbid something happened to me, I know that she know how to keep everything going afloat. Why? Because she's responsible. Before she
Right.
met you, she had her own place. She was making her own money. She was doing these responsible things. So you should want someone who is responsible, not nobody who's a liability. See, some people, why would you get a liability?
Yeah, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. Right. But then also too, it's like, men also have to be comfortable with women doing that. So sometimes I have heard of men being like, well, what do you need me for? If you have a house, and it's like, so you want a woman to only love you because of what you can provide, like only of what you can do for her. Like, that doesn't necessarily make sense to me either. Like, I understand if you want to be the man and you depend on me and all of that, but then also too is like, do you want me to love you for who you are, or is it because you want me to love you only because you provide for me? So what's wrong with me having my own house, having my own car, having these things? So it's like, if you have your stuff together and I have my stuff together and we come together, then that means that's more stuff that we have together. There are more things that we can do together in order to ensure we're building a strong, happy, healthy family, and our children are happy, healthy, and whole, and they're continuing that. So then
That's
they
it.
go off and marry other happy, whole children, and they create happy, whole families, and that's how
Yep.
happy, whole, strong communities come together.
I agree 1,000%. Yeah, it's about the character. What guys do. I'm not. They go off the physical standpoint. Oh, she looks good, but do you know her character? You get
Mm,
with her, and they go men and women. Hey, it's some jacked up folks out here. Men and women got some jacked up characters out here.
yeah,
But it's all about being mindful of who you get entwined with, having these deep conversations. Or okay, if you meet somebody and they have children already, you need to have these conversations. Okay, how are you and a biological parent are? I need to get to know them as well. I need to know what's going on. because I don't do drama. I need to know about peace. I need to know where their head at. That's what mature adults do. They sit. If you be with somebody who does have kids, you need to
Right.
have these conversations before we tie the knot and say, I do. We need to
Mm-hmm.
have this conversation. All of these sit down and have this conversation. Because some guys, they feel some type of way. Some women feel some type of way when somebody move in. And because we don't talk about these kind of things.
Yeah, but I mean, even before the whole should we get married, it's like, can you even date somebody who has kids? Like, and then okay, even if they have it, how many kids is too many kids? Like, what's your
Right.
relationship like with the other parent? Like, so these are all of the questions that people need to start asking earlier in the process. And again, that goes back to knowing yourself of, hey, if I don't like kids and you got 5 kids, we not gonna make it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And be okay with, all right, you're cool. We could probably be great friends, but you're just not the person for me.
Yeah, that's it. Because it's like I'm not saying like an interview like you said earlier, like an interview. It's like when you go, okay, if you go apply for a job, I'm
Right,
just using this analogy. You go apply for a job, you sit down, the HR, whoever be there, gonna let you know, hey, the ins and outs, do's or don'ts of the job.
right,
And it's up to you to accept it. What they give you, they're not gonna force it on you. They're not gonna tell you, hey, you better take this job. No, they're gonna give you the ins and outs of
right,
their job. Not up to you to take the job, right? That's
right,
just like a relationship or
right.
more
And
not.
you realize that, hey, at some point this isn't working for me. Okay, fine. Be honest about it, and I'm like, I'll put it out there, I'm in that situation right now. So it's like, let's just have honest dialogue of, hey, something needs to change in order for me to stay here, or I'm going to have to go elsewhere. And and again, that's okay, but for whatever reason, we got to figure out what it is of why we feel uncomfortable with being honest. Like, and I'm 100% a proponent of radical honesty. I'm not saying that you have to be rude or mean about it, but it's just, hey, that doesn't work for me. And okay, that doesn't work for me. Is there something that we could do to change this in order to make it better? Or if this is the way that it is, then you have to be comfortable with walking away, and that's okay.
It comes from the fear of the repercussions of being truthful. Because we know
Mm,
that people don't like the truth, even though the truth is going to tell you the truth. The truth is love, because the truth is always going to tell you the truth, which means that is love.
right,
And people scared of the consequences of being truthful. Just like when we were children and we did something. First thing we did, we lied. We lied because we know we
you ain't
told the
want to
truth.
get right.
You want to get in trouble, and that's what goes on today. People lie out of fear.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with somebody, and they argued me up and down about that. No, I said you lie out of fear.
Mm,
No, no, he trying to debate me. He was comparing it to his wife. To my, yeah, you don't lie to your mom, but why would you lie to your wife? And I told him, you can't tell me nothing. You tell the truth to your mom, you lie to your wife. No,
right,
because you scared of repercussions. I said, you know what? You scared of repercussions because you know what's gonna happen. She gonna
right,
put you out. She gonna put you on the well. She gonna do, and you
right.
don't want to go through that repercussion. See, you'll sit there and lie, but why lie when you
Well,
have
you
to come
don't
with another?
have to. You don't have to. Yeah, you really don't have to. And then it's also of, what if you tell the truth and you get what you want? What if it turns out better than you were expecting? So it's like you already have this outcome in your head and the
Mm,
story that you're telling yourself, and it's like, that might not necessarily be true. You don't know that until you
right.
tell the truth.
Right. Hey, and it pays me. But I'm glad now that we're learning. I'm glad now that we are growing, and I'm glad now that we are maturing as we learn on this life journey of knowing ourselves, and that's what it's all about. I know we pressed for time and stuff. We had a great time on the show. I know I missed half because my technical difficulties, but I appreciate you again. So go ahead and plug in the insight information. Where can people go and watch the documentary and all of the great stuff?
So you can watch the documentary on Hulu or Disney Plus. Is called Clotilda: The Return Home. Feel free to check me out on Facebook. I'm under Delisha Monique. If you want to check me out on Instagram, my handle is at Brown Shug, SHUG, and the number 6. And if you don't have Hulu or Disney Plus, please feel free to hit me up. We'll figure out a way for you to watch the documentary. But this documentary is so important to I'll just black people. I would say people in general. I feel like everybody can relate to wanting to know who you are, where you come from, but black people in particular, like this is a documentary that you do not want to miss. So please check it out. Let me know what you think. Even if you didn't like it, let me know that too, so I can know what to do better next time. There is going to be a part 3. I don't know if it's going to be with National Geographic or if I'm going to have to strike out on my own, but would love to hear your thoughts. Um, yeah, and research your family tree, find out who you are. Like that is the most important takeaway from this conversation. Of even if you feel like there's going to be some things, and trust me, there's going to be some things that come up about some people in your family that might make you look at them in a different light, but it also can explain some of the family traumas and the secrets and the things that you might have noticed but you don't fully understand. And the only way to deal with that, that's going to be the way to your healing. You have to face it head on. And that goes back to that honesty that we were talking about. Just keep it 100. This is what it is. So don't be afraid of that. Deal with it and heal.
Yeah, most definitely. And I appreciate it getting great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank everybody for tuning in. Also, man, if y'all on the YouTube side right now, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. I appreciate y'all a lot. Also, I want to thank everybody who's been supporting me since day one. I got this email and achieved July 30th, 2024. Walking This Way Impact Voice has 70,000 views as of July the 20th, 2024. July the 30th, 2024. So I want to thank everybody for getting up 70,000 views. So I appreciate y'all one more time. It's all about being consistent. And Delisha, I thank you once again. Keep up the great work. I thank you again. Thank everybody tuning in for supporting her as well. Keep supporting the work that she's doing as well also. And we out this thing. I will be back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. on Wednesday night edition. I won't be doing Walking This Way Impact Voice podcast this Saturday. I'll be interviewed on another platform this coming Saturday. So your boys get on out there doing other shows as well, be interviewed, being spotlighted. But I thank everybody for. I've been getting so many friend requests from a lot of people since I made a post about coming on the show. I appreciate everybody hitting me up with friend requests all night, all day. I have responded. If I had not responded to me, I do apologize. I'm constantly working, booking shows, and sometimes I cross up with a lot of putting people in the same place at one time. But be patient with your boy. I'm putting everything together because everything is going fast. So it's always a good thing. Delisha, do you have anything you want to share? Any final remarks, any words of wisdom, any signs of advice we'll leave here with the audience?
Ooh, like I said, don't be afraid to research your family tree. But I do want to give a couple of shout outs to people. So again, real big ups to Egbe Oya Oberyn, Rites of Passage. Love you all very much. Want to give it up to my Ashwada family. So those are the groups of people that I practice Ifa with, that I study with. Also, thank you to Ile Imole. We recently had the Risha Fest. It was beautiful. Was happy to participate in that. So just thank you very much to everyone who has watched the documentary. So thank you very much to my family for supporting me and giving me information to share with folks about our family history. All of the people who have written books, whether that's Dr. Natalie Robertson, also Sylvia and Dioff, Terrence Spivey, Clotilda Descendants Association, Joycelyn Davis, so many people. I know I'm forgetting folks, but thank you very, very much for everything. And thank you, Furman, for allowing me to come on.
Yeah, you know, problem all the time. I love your spirit. I love what you represent, and that's what it's all about. So keep doing what you're doing. You're
Absolutely.
truly a blessing. You're truly a blessing in generation with the work that you're doing, and you're inspiring other individuals on what you're doing. So keep up the great work. Like I said, we out this thing. I will be back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. here on the Walking This Way Impact Boys podcast. Man, y'all be blessed, everybody. Peace.